Spanish-American War, 1898. The War of Spanish America was fought BW Spain and America formed April 21st in 1898 to 10 December 1898. Here in this video we knowing about Spanish-American War. When did this war happen? Where did this war happen? Why did this war happen? What is the aim of this war? How this war ended? So let's start the video. First one is, when did this war happen? Spanish-American War happened in April 21st at 1808. United States declared war on Spain, following sinking of battleship Maine in Havana Harbor on February 15, 1898. Here, another question was, how this war started. The war started when Cuba is struggling for independence from Spain. The Cuba conflict was injurious to U.S. investment in the island, which were estimated 50 million. And almost U.S. trade entered the Cuba ports. The war was largely against property and led the destruction of sugarcane and sugar mills. Monetary interest was appealed to American humanitarian sentiment. Under the Spanish commander Captain Gen Valeriano Waileri Nicocotao. Cuban were reconcentration areas in around larger cities. Those who remained at larger were treated as enemies. Spanish authorities made no adequate provision for shelter, for food, sanitation, or medical care for the reconcentrados, thousands of whom died from exposure, hunger, and disease. Humanitarians' concern for the suffering Cubans was added to traditional American sympathy for a colonial people struggling for independence. Second one is, where did this war happen? The Spanish-American War took place in multiple places, including Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam, Philippines. The first major battle of the war was Battle of Manila Bay on May 1st, 1898, where U.S. Commodore George Dewey defeated the Spanish fleet. Cuba. The U.S. troops landed in Cuba on June 22, 1898, and fought the Spanish in the Battle of San Juan Heights on July 1st, 1898. Lieutenant Colonel Theodore Roosevelt led the Rough Riders Cavalry Regiment in this battle. Guam ceded to the U.S. as part of Treaty of Paris. Main theaters of combat, Spanish-American War, the Philippines and Cuba, fighting centered on Manila, where American Commodore George Dewey destroyed Spanish Pacific Fleet. At the Battle of Manila Bay, May 1 through 1898, in Santiago de Cuba, which fell to U.S. forces after hard fighting in July. Third one, why did this war happen? The Spanish-American War primarily occurred due to the Cubans struggling for independence from Spain, atrocities against Cubans, and the mysterious explosion of U.S. battleship Maine and Havana Harbor, which led to public outrage and pressure on the U.S. government to intervene militarily against Spain. Key point of the war? Cuba Rebellion. The main catalyst was the ongoing Cuban Revolution against Spanish rule, which sparked sympathy and support for many Americans. Yellow journalism. Newspaper like those owned by William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer guarded stories about Spanish brutality Cuba, further inciting public opinion against Spain. Sinking of the USS Maine, the explosion of the U.S. battleship Maine in Havana Harbor, while the exact cause remained unknown, served as the immediate trigger of war, as many Americans blame Spain. U.S. imperialist aims. The war also reflected growing U.S. ambitions to expand its overseas territories and influence. Fourth one, what is the aim of this war? The aim of this war, United States to support Cuba for independence from Spanish rule, ultimately leading to U.S. anchoring territories like Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, solidifying its position as a global power by ending Spain's colonial presence in the Americas and going new strategic territories across Pacific. U.S. interest. U.S. had significant economic Cuba and used to rebellion as a pretext to expand its influence in the region. Outcome. The U.S. emerged victorious, for Jane Spain relinquished control over Cuba and cede other territories of the U.S. Who are involved in this war? The Spanish-American War involved U.S. and Spain, as well as other individual groups. Cuban revolutionaries fought for independence from Spain, colonial rule for 3 years before the war began. William McKinley, U.S. President at the time. Theodore Roosevelt, appointed Assistant U.S. Secretary of the Navy. Emilio Aguinaldo, elected President of the new Philippines Republic. Fernando Primo de Rivera, Governor General of the Philippines. Miguel Primo de Rivera, Fernando Primo de Rivera nephew and adjutant, Antonio Canovas, Spanish Prime Minister, who was assassinated. Pedro Paterno, a Filipino lawyer and intel who mediated the Pact of Biak-na-Bato. How this war ended? The war ended when government signed Treaty of Paris on December 10, 1898. Outcome Cuban. Spain renounced all claims to Cuba. Guam and Puerto Rico. Spain ceded Guam and Puerto Rico to USS. Philippines. Spain sold the Philippines to US $20 million war end. Spain colonial empires in the Western Hemisphere and secured the US Pacific power.